So, RaeAnne, I know you're a New York Times bestselling author and that you have dozens of books of romance, I think contemporary, right?
Yeah. And some romantic suspense. Back in the early days of my career, I did quite a few romantic suspense.
Oh, yeah, I've switched off like that too. And, I'm having trouble introducing you because my brain is fried. Could you help me out here?
Oh, sure. So, my name is RaeAnne Thayne. I have been writing for a long time. My first book came out in 96. I'm working on my 78th book right now that's due this week. And I write contemporary, small town. Like I said, I've done romantic suspense before. Been around forever. Feels like started in the days before the internet. So that tells you how long I've been doing this. And I live in Cache Valley. So that's where I am.
That's really impressive. 78th book?
Yes.
Wow.
Well, when you have a 30-year career and you do a couple books a year, it adds up fast.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Way to show up the rest of us.
Yeah, again, I've been around a long time. So for good and bad, that means for good and bad, I think. I've
Great.
seen the industry go through phases and then go through them again and
Do you have
well,
do you have a favorite? I
a
mean,
favorite of my
a
book.
favorite. Yeah, I mean,
Um,
is there one of your books that just like lives in your heart maybe more than some of the others?
It's always so hard for me to answer because it's like saying which of your kids do you like better, But
I
the
mean, I
last
can answer that question.
my most
But
recent is The Lost Book of First Loves, and I loved that one because there's kind of a writing angle to that one. It's about two sisters who kind of discover themselves in adulthood, and one of them, or their father, was like this famous author, like a John Steinbeck kind of
hmm,
Hemingway kind of famous guy, and he's passed away, but it's kind of about discovering his writing journey. And then 15 Summers Later, my book up there, I really kind of felt like that was I dug a little deeper for that one in a lot of ways, and so I like that one. That came out last summer. And any of my Christmas books, if you're in the mood for cozy, Hallmarky, kind of feel I've got lots of Christmas books.
I've seen it. I've seen them on the shelves. Excellent. All right. Well, you have some wisdom then. I mean, you've really talked yourself up.
Yeah, yeah, well,
We
right.
we
No,
we have a lot of expectations now. I don't know
no,
how you feel
that's
about
not
that.
good. Okay, well, I'm going to share my screen if I can make it work. I'm not the
Yep.
super techy, but I'll do my best. There we go. Let me just wait
All
for
right.
it.
Yeah,
Okay, there
you're
we go.
golden on this end.
All right, perfect. Okay, you can all see it. So actually, before I'm excited to be here. I was honored to be asked to talk to you guys. I love talking to writers, but I kind of always give the caveat that I don't know. I mean, I think we all have our own way of doing things. So my way is not the way. I hope you take something from this, but don't feel like, it's all about me. You have to do exactly what I do because everybody has their own way and what works for them and things like that and what is important to them. So I did want to know, I did talk, is it Kira? Kira? I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name.
Sorry. Yes, my name's Kira.
Kira and
And
Melissa. And
Melissa, yeah, Melissa and I, we are the co-presidents of the romance chapter.
well, I'd love to hear from the others if they could tell me what they write and where they're from, if you don't mind maybe unmuting for a minute before we get started, just so I have context and can maybe direct my conversation toward what you guys are writing and what might be of interest to you. So Iris, do you want to start? Do you want to tell me what you write?
Oh yeah, I do romance as well as fantasy.
Okay. And what part of the state are you? Just
I am about 20 minutes out of Salt Lake.
oh, great. Okay. And Carolyn, what about you? She's there? No, maybe not there. That's fine. That I kind of know the direction that I'll kind of take the conversation. So, my goal for this workshop is threefold. Oh, sorry, I have to click on something else. There we go. I want to talk about how setting, let's just speak about setting and about how setting can enhance the emotional and romantic elements of a story. I do feel like this is sometimes an overlooked component. We're always focused on our characters and the dialogue, and all those things, of course, are very important, but the setting can really help us bring those emotions onto the page for the readers and help them really feel like they are part of the story, which is should be our goal every time we sit down to write. We want our readers to feel the same emotions that our characters are feeling. We want them to be invested in the story. And one of the ways we can do that is by sort of figuring out that sense of place. And then I want to talk about explore how setting becomes a character in itself, and then discuss a little bit about how to build authentic settings. And I do have, some worksheet of some exercises you can do, or I can just tell you those, or you could take a picture of the screen or watch the video, or however you want to do that. So, okay, let's get into it. First of all, why is setting important? How does it enhance the emotional and romantic elements of a story? So I want to start first of all by discussing the importance of setting in fiction for doing just that. Um, when you think about setting, it's easy to think we're only talking about a specific location where our book is set, but there's so much more to it than that. Setting is really anything about the physical elements of your story. That's really the setting. So it could be the time of year that your book takes place. It can be what's the weather, what's the general climate. What's the geography there? What's the social and political environment? I consider those setting too, because that sort of helps you figure out the characters and how they're, interacting with their community and their environment. What's the history of your place? What are the ancestral roots of your place? So those are all things, to think about when it comes to setting. Um, and then you can narrow it down. So this is the overview for your book, might be these questions. You can actually narrow that down to each particular scene and ask yourself those questions about each particular scene. Maybe there's a scene that takes place, in sunshine, and it's important that that be in sunshine. Maybe there's a place that's in a stormy place or a stormy time, and it's important that that particular emotional scene takes place during the storm to sort of mirror what your characters are going through. So, question is, why is setting so important? For one thing, it provides context for the story. If you choose the right setting for your story, it provides context that grounds your story, defines the atmosphere, shapes the characters and the plot, and it helps your reader immerse themselves in your story and your characters. So like, for instance, I like to give examples. I don't know if any of you have read The Road by Cormac McCarthy, but the fact that it's this desolate I can't say that word, apocalyptic setting that creates an atmosphere of bleakness and survival that heightens the tension and the emotional desolation felt by the characters. It wouldn't be the same story if it weren't for the bleak sense of, the apocalypse that they're going through. It had to be that setting for that particular story to be told. Your setting can shape I think I was supposed to turn a slide. Sorry. Sorry, I have to remind myself of what I'm doing here. It shapes the characters and their motivation. Setting can often define your character's background. It can define their values, their motivations, their situation. If you're writing about a snowstorm, that can be a big part of what your characters are going through in that particular story. And it can facilitate the plot development again, like if there's a blizzard or if there's a big storm that you need to have your characters work through, and it kind of shows the character growth as they're dealing with the physical aspects of where they are. Setting can, let's talk again about the setting and the characters and motivation. I skipped past that real quickly, but that your setting can often define your characters' backgrounds, where they're from or where they live. That can influence their worldview, their goals, their relationships. In historical fiction, for example, some of you said you write historicals, the norms of the period shape the character's behavior, while in science fiction, futuristic settings can allow for a different set of rules, a whole different culture, a different decisions that your characters might make because they're living under a whole different set of societal norms for their particular story. So your setting can mirror that character growth, their arc, and where they end up at the end of the book. For example, another example that I like to give, To Kill a Mockingbird, by Harper Lee, of course. The racially charged atmosphere of the 1930s Alabama influenced this story's themes and characters, particularly Scout, as she learns about prejudice, morality, justice through the lens of her small town. So all of that, the development of that story came because of the small town and the situation where that book took place. And then the third one, it facilitates the plot development for your characters. It serves as a vehicle to move your plot forward. It can provide conflict. It can provide opportunity for your characters. For example, in adventure or survival novels, the wilderness is the setting there. The wilderness is the challenge that your characters have to overcome as they're working through, their emotional obstacles as well. In other genres, the setting can bring your characters together. Like if you're writing a science fiction again, and they might be on a spaceship, or if you're writing a fantasy, they might be riding dragons together, or whatever you're doing. Those are the setting and the surroundings can be the thing that pushes those characters in situations that brings them together and enhances the emotional resonance of your story and the romance of your story by picking the right setting for each scene, but overarching setting for your book. Let's see. Now, I do have another example. I'm good on the examples. So in The Shining, think about The Shining by Stephen King, and I'm sure most of you have seen that movie or read the book. The isolation of the hotel contributes to the rising tension and the descent into madness. It would not happen if they had not been isolated in this hotel, away from the rest of the world in the middle of the winter time. And that becomes a key element of the plot and a key element of the sense of danger because they're there alone and having to escape from the situation. And the same with like the Murder on the Orient Express. If you think about that, they're on a confined train setting. They know that the killer is on that train because it had to be one of the people on that train. And so that heightens the tension, and creates a sense of urgency as the characters have to figure out, they're trapped together and they have to figure out who did this before that person kills again, I guess. So your setting can, let's see, is that time for turning? Nope, not yet. The right setting can either isolate your characters, heighten the sense of conflict or loneliness, or like I write small town, and so the setting can either isolate the characters, make them feel more lonely as they see everybody else in this community interacting, or it can bring them together and help them, sort of open their hearts or to a sense of belonging in the books that I write. So it really kind of just depends. And so I would like you to think about your favorite book, maybe, or a book that you're currently reading right now, and think about what about that setting enhances the story for you. Is it how the writer, draws you in with description? Is it the fact that it's a unique place, an exotic place that you've never been to, and they help you feel like you're traveling, armchair traveling when you read it? Or is it just something that makes you feel cozy when you're reading it? Or just that edge of your seat adventure as you're trying to figure out if these characters are going to make it through whatever they're dealing with. So just it's really important as writers that we analyze. Unfortunately, we're writers, and so we can no longer really strictly read for pleasure anymore, unfortunately, that's sadly. And so it is important as you read a book that maybe really just catches your breath, takes your breath away and transports you to another place, to think about what did this author do with the setting, and how did they, describe it? How did they make you feel the smells and the tastes and all those things that the author was able to do to help you feel present in the moment as you're reading the story. So let's see, next slide. I forget, how would I do this? There we go. I'm going to talk a little bit about small towns in particular, just because that's what I write. You can translate this for whatever you're working on and think about how these maybe things might apply. But small town settings can resonate with readers. They provide a sense of nostalgia and escape, familiarity, charm, close-knit communities. They set the mood for the reader. They're a cozy, warm place where they want to go, and it magnifies the emotion for the reader. By the same token, I have dear friends who write kind of that small town feeling, but set in a big town. So like Sarah Morgan is a good friend of mine and Jill Shalvis, they're both good friends of mine. And their books, they like Sarah Morgan has a series set in Manhattan that feels like a family because she sets it, you know, they're people who work together, live in close proximity to each other. So you can get that same feeling and sense of community and connection if that's what you're going for in your story. Setting it anywhere. Even you're writing fantasy, you can set it, but in a school or in a, you know, a dragon writing school or whatever your fantasy is involving, you can have that same sense. And readers really crave that. They crave that. They want to feel like they belong as well in that community. And so it is really helpful to create that by the way that you write and the way that you tell the story. So let's see. Setting draws your reader in and helps them feel a sense, visualize a sense of place. It elicits emotion from them. It magnifies the emotion of your characters. I want you to think about how the setting might magnify that emotion. I've had certain situations, I can remember in particular, maybe the first book that I wrote where I really felt like, okay, this setting is really important. Before that, it was kind of just a convenient place to put the story, but I had an opening scene that took place on a grave cemetery that I know. It's in Pacific Grove, California, and it's right on the beach, and it's a beautiful view, and it's a sunny day, and this woman was burying her twin sister on this beautiful sunny day, which just the beauty of the day and the beauty of the setting just made her feel the emotional of this loss so much more intensely because of, you know, the fact that it was such a beautiful place. So the contrast can be really important, or it can mirror the emotions that your characters are going through. They can be having a fight in the middle of a thunderstorm, or they can be, you know, having sex in the middle of a thunderstorm that just, you know, makes everything more exciting and more, you know, dynamic as the story is moving forward. So let's see. When done well, your place can be a character in the story. It can shape the mood, plot, and character um, behavior. Oh, let's see. Sorry, I'm skipping around there. So by making the setting active, immersive, and emotionally relevant, you can elevate it from a mere backdrop to a living, breathing part of the story. When the environment reacts to and influences characters and events, it can feel just as complex and dynamic as any human character. One example I would think about, well, a few of them. Lord of the Rings, you know, the Middle Earth is an intricately crafted setting. It's essential for the epic scale of that particular story and the themes of the story. So the geography, the culture, the history of Middle Earth, they're not just backdrops, they're such an integral part of the story that couldn't be told without that part of the setting. And it wouldn't feel like the same adventurous ride if we didn't have that setting that could transport us. And I'm sure I could use other books that are more, you know, newer, I guess you could say, more new. And you can kind of look at the same thing and think about, how did this author do this and how did they make it come alive? And how is that setting so intertwined with the character's growth and development and with my enjoyment as a reader in what I took from that story? Another example, Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. The Manderley estate is described with eerie vividness in that book that reflects the brooding, oppressive atmosphere of the novel. And the house seems to exert control over the characters, making it feel like an active participant in the story. So by making your setting active, immersive, again, and emotionally relevant, you elevate it. And that's really something important to think about, and not just overlook it as you're setting it because you've picked a setting that you think is pretty or that you think is fun. That's great, but there need to be elements of that setting that move the plot forward in some way. All right, let's see. Trying to figure out, I'm going to skip around because I originally wrote this as for small town. I did this for Toronto romance writers who asked me to speak about writing small town in particular. So that, because most of my books, in fact, I venture to say nearly all 78 of my books have been in small towns. That's kind of something that I have focused on. And there's the reason that I focused on small towns, I could tell you, is because I feel like that's a good place for my voice. I try to write books, you know, my tagline is stories of hope, healing, and heart, because I try to write about characters who have rough things happen to them. My towns aren't perfect. My towns have difficult crises that people are facing, either personal or as a community. And so it's important for me to you know show that these towns aren't perfect, but that people kind of overcome their own pain by reaching out, helping others, helping lift other people through their pain as well. So it's kind of a natural place for my voice. So, you can think about that in terms of the books that you're writing. What is a natural fit for your voice? What kind of stories do you want to tell? In what kind of settings do you feel comfortable writing about and do you want to write about? So some things to think about with your settings. The physical aspects are important. You think about the landscape. Is it a mountain town? Are you writing about something in the ocean? Are you writing about something in outer space? Are you writing about a fictional world that you've created? Especially in a fictional world, it's really important that you creating your own universe. I mean, not all our worlds are fictional, but when you're creating your own universe, it's really important to know the rules of the society, to know the things that you've set out, and to be true to that and be authentic to that, and not suddenly change the rules halfway through that you've created. So it's important to, think about that when you're sitting down to write your book, to think about what do I want this community to be like that I'm writing about? You think about the culture of the community, the values, the traditions, the events. Do you have celebrations in your community? Do you have, if it's a historical, especially like a Regency, you're probably going to want to include something in the season in London. So, you have to think about the balls that they're going to go to, or the musicals, or all those different things that you might be writing about in a Regency, or a different kind of historical. So those are things to think about. Social dynamics, those are all part of setting, and we don't often think about that. But when you're building a community, all of these things are part of the setting, because it sets the framework for where your story is going to take place. And it's great. It's vital as authors to have that in our mind when we're writing, for not just the whole book, but also scene by scene. Where is this taking place? Is this the best place for this scene to be? Could I place it somewhere else in this world that I've created, and enhance the emotion that way? Okay. So I will say, when we're talking about small towns, one important thing I tell people to do, think of your town's history. Yes. Think about where your characters spend most of their time. How do those different locations reflect or challenge the romance in your particular story? I also say, choose a name that's going to work, that you're comfortable, if you're going to write a series, that you're comfortable writing multiple books in that series with the name that you've chosen. And also, I tell people, Google it first to make sure that another author hasn't picked that name. I wrote a series a long time ago called Whiskey Creek, back when I was writing for Love Swept. And then Brendan Novak later did one, not knowing that I had written one, called Whiskey Creek. So I self-market those, because I own the rights to those books now. And it's really hard for me to say, well, this is Whiskey Creek, but has nothing to do with Brendan Novak's Whiskey Creek. Mine came first, like 10 years before hers did. But just Google it, so you're not using a name that another author has, or a real place that has maybe a dark history, or not a very appealing place that you don't want to include. Let's see. All right. And a question to ask yourself is, do I want to use a real place or a fictional place? If you're writing contemporary romance, you're probably going to you have to make that choice. Am I going to write about a real town, a real city, or am I going to come up with one? I tend to kind of fall somewhere in the middle there, where usually my towns are fictional, but they are based on another town that I'm familiar with, or that I can look at pictures of, or something like that. So for instance, my Hopes Crossing series, that was my first kind of breakout. Those were my first books to hit the New York Times, was like my fourth book in that one. And that was loosely based on Park City, and loosely based on something that I read about that happened in Park City, an actual event where some teenagers were killed in a car accident, and the family or the community kind of rallied around, and they did yard sales for scholarship funds and things like that. And I wanted to write about that. So that series started out with that idea of setting it in something that I'd seen real. And I created my own community, but based it on Park City. It was set in Colorado, but it was a ski town, and it was, had a historic district like Park City, and all those things. So I basically just set it on that because I was familiar with Park City. We've been there quite a lot, and I have family from there, and so that was kind of an easy thing for me to do. I have another series that I set on McCall, Idaho. I wanted an Idaho place, and I wanted a lake in Idaho, so that was kind of a natural place for me to create my own community loosely based on that. So the reason I like creating a fictional town rather than doing a real town, and this might vary for everybody, do it what you want with your story, but for me, I like that because I can come up with the street names that I like. I can put the town center somewhere where it's really not in the actual town, so that's easier for me to do when I'm writing. It's just to create my own, but again, loosely base it on something else. I had a series, my Cape Sanctuary series, that's really kind of a unique one because it is each book is a standalone. There's no characters that come in and out of that series. Those were my first hardcover books, and they wanted me to not have connected series. My publisher wanted standalone books for that series. So I took two places that I know and familiar with, which is one is the Oregon coast and some of those towns like Cannon Beach on the Oregon coast, and one was the Monterey Pacific Grove area. And I kind of mashed those together, things I know about those communities, and created my own place called Cape Sanctuary. And then each book again is a standalone. And this town is important because it's set in this beautiful place by the ocean, and it's a beach town, and there's tourists and things like that. But each story, like I said, stands alone and is not connected by characters, just by setting. That's the only thing that these books have in common with each other. Okay, so again, when talking a little bit about small towns, you want to create, is your town too perfect? Again, don't do that. No town is too perfect. Every place has pain and struggles and trials, and it's really important that you're authentic in the stories that you write. You can't have everything be rosy and bright and everybody be nice to everybody. That's not reality. And so you want to be as authentic as you possibly can when you're writing your towns. There are gossip in towns, there are grudges, there are things like that when you're talking about small towns. You also want to create compelling characters in your town. I love creating settings that I want to spend time in, but every book is really about the characters, as I know you all know well. Nora Roberts, I love this quote from her. She said, "Character is key, character is plot, character is everything, and the story wraps around them." And I start with my characters. That's exactly where I start. The setting comes after I figure out who are these people, and then I think, what is the best place I can put these people that will challenge where I need them to be at the end of the book, that will help them grow, that will help, like for instance, in my book, The Lost Book of First Loves, that came out this summer, the main heroine, I have two heroines in it that are half sisters, but the main female character is this high-powered tech executive, and she basically dies on the first page. It says the day Juniper Connolly died, she just finished firing her intern. So she basically has a cardiac arrest, stops breathing. This intern that she's firing, which is actually her half sister, which she doesn't know, does CPR and brings her back to life, and then takes her back to their ranch, their father's ranch that June doesn't know that is her father, in Wyoming, a fictional town I created in Wyoming, outside of Jackson somewhere. And I needed that place of healing because that's part of my main female character's journey, is she needed this place of healing, and not only physically but emotionally. She needed a place where she could do that, and then a really beautiful place that she could kind of come to terms with the fact that everything she thought she knew about herself, she was a Division I athlete, and then suddenly finds out she has this congenital heart condition that has to get a cardio defibrillator implanted, and everything she thought she knew is not what she thought. The man she thought was her father was not her father. Her father was this famous author that was her favorite author, all these years. And so the setting really plays a big part in that particular story. Well, and I would say all of my books, I really try hard to create a setting that my readers want to spend time in, and that helps accentuate the emotions between my characters and what my readers might feel as they're reading that particular book. I would say don't overlook weather in your book. That can be a really important part. And you might be creating a universe where their weather system is completely different from ours. And that's really important to think about that, and think about what weather can I create that makes this universe unique and that adds unique challenges to my characters that they have to overcome because of things that happen there. So let's see. I want you to consider how your character's surroundings can reflect or contrast with the emotional stakes. Again, pay attention to how your settings might evoke emotion. Use it as another way to deepen your reader's connection to your characters. Let's see. I also recommend, I need to see if I needed to turn the page. No, yeah, I guess this works. I should have turned the page some time ago. Sorry about that. Use all five senses when describing your setting. You know, you don't necessarily, you have to be careful with description anymore. I mean, I'm sure you all have learned that you can't do pages and pages of description. Readers just don't want that. They want a few key things that set the scene for them, that help bring them into the scene, a few descriptors. But scent is one that we often overlook because it is so evocative. It, you know, if you describe a few scents, your reader is smelling those things too, and it brings back memories for them, and it brings back, you know, a situation and a feeling that they might have experienced before. So don't overlook those when you're describing your settings. And the same with all of the senses, how it looks, how it sounds. Even if you don't put that on a page, it's good for you to think about that yourself. You might just do a setting description and write about all those different things in this setting from, you know, your character's point of view. And I will get into a few exercises at the end, which we're getting close to. It's not going to be very long, I'm afraid. But I did want to talk about a couple of pitfalls that come when we're dealing with settings. One is using overly familiar or cliched depictions. It's really important to think about, you know, am I describing this community in a way that 100 other authors have described their community? How can I make it seem different? How can I, you know, make it feel like a new and fresh place for readers? How does it feel like every other book, 77 books that I've written, you know, or how can I make this particular setting feel different? Inconsistent descriptions. And I would say that is important in any kind of book that you write. It's especially important when you're world building something new. If you're inconsistent in the way that you describe it, your readers are going to be lost and they're not going to feel connected to that setting and community. Again, ignoring the role of weather and seasons, you can really enhance the emotion by choosing carefully when you're deciding, is this book going to take place at Christmas time? Is it going to be in the fall? Is it going to be in the spring? Is this community that I've built one that has the same weather year round, or does it change? And how does it change? And how does that impact the story and the plot and the characters' goals and motivations as we're moving through the story? You want to be careful that you don't create a one-dimensional community. You want to make sure that, again, it's not too perfect. There have to be pains and scars and wounds in your communities, just like we want to create in all of our characters. So, you know, there are things you need to, every community kind of needs to overcome maybe their dark history or their racism or their dark things that they've dealt with in the past. You know, that's one thing that you can and add some texture to your story by that. And then again, forgetting about change and growth. Like I said, you want to have your community grow, just like you want your characters to grow. The community needs to grow and change and become better by the end of the book, or at least by the end of the series, if you're writing a multi-book series that are connected stories. Let's see. So I forgot to look at this part of my book, or my workshop, but um, I'm going to go back a little bit about the pitfalls and give you some ways to overcome those. So using overly familiar or cliche depictions of small towns, like the nosy neighbor, the diner with only one booth, or the ubiquitous everyone knows everyone's business without adding depth or nuance. While small towns often have these things, if you lean too heavily on them, it will not ring true with your readers. So the solution to that is add unique quirks, specific cultural details to your community that make your town stand out, show the good and the bad, and how the community members interact with each other. Every small town has its own personality. So, I would say, even if you're not writing small town, every community that you're writing about is going to have its own personality as well. We want it to be a character, and part of that is by creating a unique personality that's not cliche for your characters to do their thing in as they're moving through the story. All right, again, and then the inconsistent or vague descriptions, the solution to that is be specific, maintain consistency, establish key landmarks like Main Street, like local hangouts, like notable houses in the community, like the history. I'm writing a book right now that is set in the book that I need to turn in. It has a little quirky little bookstore in it, and there's this beautiful historic mansion that has fallen apart. And part of the storyline is that the hero the hero has bought this, and the heroine is the contractor who's fixing it up, and that's kind of a metaphor for their relationship. Her fixing up this house is kind of a metaphor for how their relationship is going to go. So think about all of those things. Let's see. And then if you ignore the role of weather and seasons, you tend to do that. The solution is to use the weather to reflect or contrast the emotional arc of the story. A rainy season could heighten the emotional tension um, or healing, while a sunny festival could heighten joy or nostalgia. That adds another layer of realism and makes the setting feel dynamic. The setting can feel detached from the plot. We talked about that a little bit. Writing a small town setting doesn't influence the plot or characters' choices can feel like their setting is just a backdrop. You've not given a lot of thought to it. And so the solution to that is to tie the setting closely to the plot. Have local events, town gatherings, town conflicts that help pressure the characters into decisions that they need to make, and to their relationships. You can a town festival could create a romantic opportunity. A local tradition might push characters out of their comfort zone as they have to kind of deal with that. I remember I wrote one quite early in my career where the characters ended up being in charge of a community fair together. They didn't want to be, but their kids had been misbehaving, and their teacher kind of ended up, I don't even remember the details of it, but she ended up putting these two single parents together to plan this town or this school community event that they had to do. And so that's something that you can use to move the plot forward, if you could come up with things like that. And the one-dimensional community for that, the solution to that is to create a diverse community with varied personalities. Not everyone in a small town has to be nice or funny. Some should be distant, some cynical, others indifferent. I would also say be very careful of make sure that you have multiple ethnicities in your story. Early in my career, I made a lot of mistakes and set my stories much like the small towns in Utah. They felt very, very white to me. Now, as I look back at them, and I have to think I needed to add a lot more texture. I wish I had done that. And so that's something to think about and make sure that your character feels like you're trying to encompass the entire experience in this community, and not just by your own prism as the author and whatever your cultural and life choices are. You want to make sure that you try to make it rich and make it real as you're writing. And then the last pitfall there, forgetting about change and growth. So show your town evolving along with your characters, whether it's the arrival of new businesses, the decline of a once thriving industry, social changes within the community. Make the town feel like it's also part of the story's forward momentum. Or again, if you're creating a world, you want to make the world feel like the world is changing for something. Something is happening because of your character's choices that is important to the survival of this community or the world that you've created, or the tribe, or however you are creating this setting and the setup for your story. So just make sure that part needs to change and grow as well. Okay, so I do have a handout, and I will make that available to you guys, but I do want to talk about some of the exercises that are on the handout. I don't have a way to share that, I don't think, because I guess I could maybe see if I can do that. Get onto my other part of my screen and find it. Just a second. That was probably easier than me just going through line by line. All right. Oh, that's not it. That's the workshop itself. Sorry. Have to go somewhere else. Find it. You can see what a mess my laptop is while whoops, it's not what I wanted to do. Okay, there we go. There's the handout. All right. Am I sharing that still? Can you guys all see it? Okay. So here's some exercises that you can do that can help with thinking about the emotional impact of your story, and exercises for writing vivid settings. Visit a location that you've never been to before, and that can be an actual place from a setting you've chosen, or simply a place near you that you find interesting. When you first arrive, don't take a picture. Don't write anything down. Just spend time absorbing it through your senses, the smells that you smell there, the sounds, the chatter of the people, different things, absorb every single part of your senses and think about your senses. Pay attention to that. And then go home later and write a description of the place. And remember to include all those sensory details because that's so important. And it's a great exercise for helping you develop that setting muscle to think about setting in a way that resonates with your readers and feels real to your readers. Okay, the next exercise, select an important location from your novel or short story. It could be anything, a public building, a business, a famous landmark, a landscape, someone's house. Now choose 2 characters from your story and write a short paragraph describing how they might react to the setting. And this helps you not only to figure out the setting, but also helps you with your characters, saying how would they see this separately. You get to know your characters much better when you ask that question. How would my main male character see this? How would my main female character or my the other protagonist see this situation or this setting? How would they describe it from their life experience that they've been through? Choose places, write them on index cards. Organize them according to how you think a story should unfold at that location. Would it make more sense for your characters to move from one theme to another, like from a religious building to a scientific one? What's the most efficient way to organize these scenes? Would a random route be more interesting for your readers? Focus on memorable details. Keep the details grounded in the character's sensory experience. Everyone knows what a tree looks like, so if you're describing one, tell the reader what makes it different or why it's important from that character's point of view that you're using to describe that scene. You want to let your reader know what it feels like for the character, what it sounds and smells and tastes like. And your characters, again, are going to experience everything a little bit differently because of their life experience or what they're dealing with at that particular moment in time, in that particular scene, their own emotions that they're feeling. They're going to see things differently in their surroundings. And no matter what kind of world you're creating, that technique can bring more vividness to your writing. So on the final one, exercise, on an unlined sheet of paper, create a map of your world. Pay attention to detail. Even the smallest moments can help you visualize the world more clearly. Show landscape features like mountains and lakes and roads. Mark cities if you have them. Note regions and counties. Try to match the feel of your setting. If it's a magic world, show features pertaining to this, a dark magician's fortress, for example. So those are just a few little exercises to think about the setting with a little more intention as you're writing. All right, I need to go back to back to this. Play from current slide. Okay, I guess I really didn't need to go because the last thing I want to know is, do you have any questions about setting or about my writing or about anything else that maybe I can answer for you?
There's a question in the chat.
Okay. Sorry, I'm not seeing this chat just because I have everything else up on the screen. So I will now stop sharing.
Carolyn's asking, can you use a real county but make up a city name?
You can. I've done that before. I'll use Boise as a real town that say it's an hour away from my town. So you can absolutely do that. You're in control. This is your world and your universe. If you're comfortable doing that, go ahead and do that. There's no law, no rule that says you can't, and I think that's fine. Like I said, I set my books in real places. I just give fictional names to those real places. So, I mean, it's in Idaho or it's in Wyoming and I talk about going to Jackson Hole, which is a real place, because that's a place I know. That one is not where most of the story takes place, where I don't, I have a little bookstore in the book that The Lost Book of First Loves. I'm on a book theme lately, I guess. And so, I didn't want to describe a real bookstore in Jackson Hole. So it's much easier to create my own town for that reason, because you're not describing the real businesses or having people who read that say, oh, I bet they're talking about this restaurant, the Three Little Pigs or whatever, So you want to create your own community for that. I'm going to see if I can open the chat. Is there any other question?
I'm curious. Do you think the setting can be a Mary Sue?
It can be a what? Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Do you think that a setting can be a Mary Sue?
A Mary Sue?
Yeah, like the character.
Oh, I'm not quite sure what you mean by that.
Oh, immersive is like a perfect person.
Oh, yeah, I haven't heard that term, but it can be, and that's why I really advise against that. You want to make flaws. You know, we don't want to write characters that are perfect. We want, and the same with your setting. You want that to have flaws. You have to have problems, you know, and struggles, and like you can have a fire that races through town and destroys some houses. You can have, you know, I've written books about floods where the community has to come together because people's houses are flooded and how they help with things like that. So I recommend not. I mean, you can do that if you want to. You can have this idealistic place, but I don't know that your readers will relate to that as well as if you write somewhere where there's some growth that needs to take place in the community.
Right.
And again, I'm not the expert on anything when it comes to writing. I have my own world. I do things my own way, but you know, so if it feels right for you, if your story feels perfect the way it is, then stick with that. I always tell people your story is your story. It's your story. Do it how you want to do it. Your process is your process, and nobody else can tell you the right or wrong way to do things.
Well, I like your way, so.
Anything else?
What are
I
what are
can.
some good ways to determine flaws for your particular setting?
Well, I try to think about what might mirror my characters, the growth that they need to go through. What's something that I can have happen in the town that will help them accelerate that growth process that they need to go through in order to, you know, deal with that. Maybe it's a blizzard. Maybe they're trapped in a blizzard. They're two people who are very, you know, very individualistic and they don't want to be together, you know, with somebody else. And so you throw them together in a blizzard and they have to overcome that. Or, you know, just
Yay, shared bed.
shared bed, one bed. You know, that's what happens. Every hotel only has one room and one bed in that room, especially in historicals, which I love. So, you know, you just think about if you guys have series that you love,
I don't
for
know. I don't
whatever
care.
series you might be into right now, you know, think about are there flaws in that community? Is there a crisis? Is there evil? Is there, you know, is there somebody who's come in and changed everything and now people need to try to figure out how to get back to not the status quo, but a better place? You know, those are kind of things that you can think about as you're writing.
I just keep picturing Stars Hollow and then thinking about all the weirdos and the
Yeah.
ways that the town isn't awesome.
Well, and that's part of the community. It makes it really interesting to have interesting characters who are unique and who, again, accelerate the conflicts in the community and also the growth of the other characters
Yeah,
because they have to learn how to interact with the weirdos, you know. That's just part of it.
awesome.
That's great.
I hope that's helpful. I hope I've said something maybe that
Yeah, it really is.
good. Good, good, good. It's great to talk to you all, and I guess
Yes.
I wish you good luck with your writing.
Thank you so much,
Thank
RaeAnne, for showing
you.
up.
Sure.
We appreciate your wisdom, as you are epically wisdomous after 78 books. Holy McGillicuddy.
No,
I
you
mean,
know
think about
what?
that, you guys. Like, 78 books over a 30-year career. That's how many books per year, and we can do, you know, we can work towards that if that's what we're. Am I talking to just myself? I
No,
think
I can hear you.
I think I'm
I would
railing at
say,
myself.
let me just say, this has been my full-time job since 1997. So I juggled career and writing. You know, I juggled a job, full-time job, and kids and writing. I know how hard it is, but I made this my career in 1997. So I've been doing this full-time since
How?
then.
Okay, one more question.
Wow.
How did you pull that off?
So, you know, it's always hard. It's hard to juggle stuff. When I first started writing, it was just my dream to have a job that I could do at home. I was a newspaper editor at the Herald Journal in Logan. I loved my job, but I really wanted to do something using my own creativity. I kind of discovered kind of early in the process that I wasn't cut out for journalism and I wanted to write fiction. And so I really dedicated a lot to that. I had sold my 5th book before I quit writing to write, or before I quit my job to write full time. And I would get up early in the morning. I would get up at 4:30 in the morning to write when I was trying to sell at first, and then I'd write at night. And I'd sometimes take vacation days and still take our daughter to the sitter so that I could have a day of writing, just so I could get some things done. I'm not a super fast writer, and I mean it might sound like that. I have 78 books, but my friends that started at the same time are in the hundreds. And part of my situation is that we have a son with severe disabilities who's 28 now, and I quit the week that we had him. So he's been part of my writing journey the whole time, has been his mom as a caregiver. And, he's nonverbal, he's non-mobile, he requires total care. And so that's a big part of my particular journey. And maybe it's part of why I write the kind of stories that I do, because we have seen firsthand, community that's embraced us and helped us with him, and how the world treats him is so beautiful. And so that's kind of the stories that I try to write from my perspective and from the experiences. My books are different now than they were when I started, because we didn't have him when we started. And now that we have him, it kind of shifted my whole worldview into something different. And so, I'm very grateful for the way that my career has gone. I feel really lucky that I had a publisher that was really supportive of me. I think we didn't have the possibility of indie publishing. I think I would have loved doing that. And then maybe my voice would have changed a little bit if I'd had that opportunity. But that wasn't around when I started. And by then I was kind of entrenched in traditional publishing. So that's really all I've had experience with. But I'm thrilled that there's so many opportunities for writers now that there just weren't when I started. And I think it's fabulous.
That is fantastic. That's such a great story.
No.
Agreed.
Okay. Thank you so much, RaeAnne. We'll let you go.
Right.
Wait,
We really appreciate your time.
Sharing your wisdom with
Oh, my publisher is Harlequin.
Oh, okay, great. Yes.
Sorry, there was a question, who's your publisher? My publisher is Harlequin. So I started out with them. Actually, my first publisher was Bantam Doubleday Dell, when they used to have the Love Swept category romance line. And then I moved to Silhouette, and I wrote for Silhouette for quite a long time. And then Silhouette was bought out by Harlequin. So it's been Harlequin since then, and they're still my publisher. So now it's Mira, HQN and Mira. HQN's going away at the end of the year, and then it will just be Mira after that. So that's what I'm with. And it's interesting. Traditional publishing is a weird world right now. Let me just tell you. It's a really weird world if you guys don't know. Because, if you're not on TikTok, your books just aren't getting in stores. And so you have to kind of figure out, how am I going to still be relevant in this age when I'm not on TikTok? I mean, I'm on TikTok, but my books aren't the sexy, fun books that people are reading on TikTok. So it's hard to find a purchase there, but we do our best, right? Keep writing and just remember, the story is the important part. Just get the story out that I feel strongly about.
Yep. Just keep swimming.
Yep. Just keep swimming. All right. Well, thank you guys all so much. Have a great night. And I can email the handout if you want me to, and the PowerPoint if
Oh,
you guys.
yeah.
Yes, please.
So I'll send that to Melissa. You're the only one that I have an email address.
Yeah, just go ahead and send it to Melissa. Melissa will get that to me or for everybody else.
I'll do that. Okay. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank
Good luck.
Thank you.
Good night. All right, for everyone who's still here, we have our anthology is still taking sweet and spicy stories. If you only write one or the other, we'll take that. We'd love one story from each person, one sweet, one spicy, but I will accept what we can accept because we are just happy to have you be part of it. We have our romance retreat in a couple of weeks. It's going to be amazing. If you have not paid Liz, please go ahead and do that. If you've made arrangements with her, that's great. But yeah, it's going to be exciting. We made the schedule the other day. We've got a lot of stuff going on. It's going to be a lot of fun. And then I think we've got our the paranormal romance launch is happening
October 10th.
October 10th. Thank you, Melissa.
I couldn't think of the day either.
Yeah, I knew it was in October, but all I can remember is Darkness 102 is is this weekend. I was like, oh, paranormal romance isn't for a few weeks. I'll worry about it then. I guess I can stop recording, huh?
Mhm.
So we've got cool stuff, guys. Cool stuff coming up. So keep a watch. We're always looking for blog posts. Anyone who wants to write about a topic they either know a lot about or want to know more about, and therefore research for a topic and tell the rest of us. That's awesome too. And so we thank you all for being here. And it's
He has work, doesn't he?
well, it's 7:59. All right.